Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Emma, or at T1D. I've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel for a little while now, so finally here we are. I'm quite excited. And what I thought I would do is just bring different videos on different topics about tips and tricks, things I've learned to help me deal with my type 1 diabetes and have a smooth ride with as few highs and lows as possible. So I'll be doing different vlogs, different topics, and hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. Just for a quick bit of info, in case you hear any beeping throughout the video, I am using a Dexcom, which is here. Can't really see it, but we'll do a video on that another day. I'm on a pump. Obviously I'm still using test strips and whatnot as well. And of course, you always have to have your hypo treatment. So I thought, what better way than to start my YouTube channel with a video about my diagnosis story. So without any further ado, let's jump straight in. So there's always that question when people ask you about your diagnosis story, where do you actually pinpoint the start date? Because it happens before the day that you're told you're type 1 diabetic. So for me, the day I was diagnosed was actually on my birthday, my 29th birthday. But there was a lot of it took a while to get to that diagnosis, and just unfortunately it just happened to fall on my birthday, but we'll get to that. So what had happened was, and looking back now, all the classic symptoms, I can suddenly remember the day the thirst started. I'd eaten a Domino's pizza. At the time, I was more overweight than I am now, quite considerably. I'd eaten a Domino's pizza and I was so thirsty. Even now, just thinking about it, it makes me really, really thirsty. So I'd eaten this pizza and I was thirsty, and I thought, maybe it must be the salt. I drank a lot of water that night, and I can remember it so vividly. Well, you all know if you're type 1 diabetic watching this, and if you're not, hopefully you never have to experience it. But it's a thirst that no amount of water can cure. And for some reason I was craving orange juice. I just felt like the orange juice was the only thing that would be soothing my throat at the time. Anyway, needless to say, it didn't, and this thirst just never went away. I never wanted to be without water. And then obviously, might be too much information for some, I just really started needing the loo all the time. If I was going on a car journey, a plane journey, sitting in a meeting at work, I was always worried because every sort of 10 minutes or less I'd have to go to the toilet. And I'd have to have water with me wherever I went. And this was back in, I would say, around the March of that year of 2014. And then after that, I started to get really, really tired all the time. But me not really knowing anybody close, not having close friends or relatives with type 1 diabetes, I didn't put two and two together. It wasn't in my family. It just wasn't something that I thought I could ever get. Anyway, the symptoms went on, and the tiredness was getting worse. I used to get home from work, go straight to bed and sleep all the way through till the morning. And it was even getting to the point where I would be walking to work, which at the time wasn't far, so I'd get the bus and then it would be about a 10-minute walk from the bus stop. And I couldn't even walk from the bus stop to the office without having to stop for a rest, which for me is unheard of because I could always just walk and walk and walk for miles without getting tired. So it was all really strange. Eventually I went to the doctor and I explained what my symptoms were, and they looked at my medical records, and I've always suffered with migraines. So somehow they put my symptoms down to migraine. So a few times I went back, they tried antibiotics, they put me on different migraine medication, and this went on for a couple of months till about the May. And I went back in and I said, look, something's just not right. Rather than just giving me medicine all the time, why don't we actually do a blood test and see if there's anything going on, because I really think there's something. So anyway, they still didn't give me a blood test then. They said try these migraine tablets, and I tried them, they didn't work. So I went back, had all my symptoms listed down, which now I know, if I'd looked at them now, if I saw someone give me those, I'd say, I think you're diabetic, you need to test your blood sugar. And really, when you think about it now, it's so easy to do that. Anyway, I was listed on a blood test and they gave me a blood test. And this was about a week before my birthday. I was feeling a bit better actually, so I almost didn't go in, but I thought, I've got the form, I'll go in, get my bloods done, see what it's all about. That was on the Friday. My birthday was on the Monday, this was the Friday. So, excuse me, came to work on the Monday and I had a phone call from the doctor, and the doctor said, you know, would you be able to come into the surgery? We really need to see you urgently. And I said, is it about my results? I wasn't expecting to hear anything for a little while. And they said, yeah, your blood sugar's really high. We just need you to come in and have a little look at that. So I said, okay, I'll come in after work. I've got a busy day. I'd just started a new job, by the way. And my new job was at a chocolate company, chocolate factory. I'm still there. And I'd been eating this chocolate for about 3 weeks. And when I say eating it, I was eating it like it was going out of fashion. It's novel, right? Having chocolate all over the office, you can eat it as much as you want. And I was losing weight. And I don't mean a pound a week. I was losing 3, 4, 5 pounds a week. And I thought, what kind of magical chocolate is this? This is fantastic. Little did I know that I didn't have any insulin. My pancreas had stopped working, and that's why the calories weren't coming in and I was losing weight. So yeah, so it was the Monday of my birthday and I thought, oh gosh, okay, let me go to the doctor. And the plan for my birthday actually was to go home and have a Domino's pizza. Thank God I didn't. So I got to the doctor's, they tested my blood sugar and it was 28. They tested my ketones, and on the dipstick it was something like 4. Can't remember exactly, but it was high. And she said, you need to go straight to A&E. And at this stage I was on my own. I was a bit sort of flabbergasted, didn't really understand what was going on, but I thought, okay, regardless of the fact it's my birthday, I better get myself down to A&E. So that's exactly what I did. Gave in the form, sat in reception and waited to be called through. They took me through and I sat on a bed, and then a nurse came over and she said, oh, lift up your top and just show us your belly. I said, okay. She said, I'm just going to give you some insulin. And I thought, okay. So she did that. And I sort of said, well, it's my birthday. Can I go home now? She said, no, you're going to have to stay in. We need to put you on a drip. You're going to have this insulin drip. We need to get your blood sugar down. You're diabetic. I said, I'm not diabetic, am I? I didn't know what was going on at this stage. So anyway, they sort of put me on a drip, put me on the A&E ward, and there I stayed till the next morning. And the next morning, waiting for the doctor to come round, someone gave me some toast and butter. And I mean, at this stage I didn't know a lot about diabetes, but I knew I probably shouldn't be eating toast, pure carbs, without any additional insulin. My drip had run out, and I said to the nurse, I said, I'm here because they think I'm diabetic. Should I be eating this toast? I'm not really sure. She said, oh, let me get the doctor, we'll get you some insulin. A couple of hours went past, didn't see anyone. I won't name the hospital because it's not really important. Anyway, so that happened. I didn't eat the toast because I googled it, and it, you know the story. So I sat, didn't see a doctor the whole day, apart from one nurse who came by, and she was sort of muttering, well, this person must be a type 2, she's 29, she's overweight, and people don't get diagnosed with type 1 after the age of 20. They actually said that. So the next day I waited and I finally saw a doctor. The doctor came round and pretty much echoed the same opinion of the nurse, in that I was too old for type 1, but he was a little bit confused because he thought I was too young for type 2. But he definitely thought I was fat enough to have type 2, which was nice, just saying. Anyway, this went on and on and on, so I wasn't discharged that day, even though my blood sugar had come down, because they couldn't work out whether I was type 1 or was I type 2. I had ketones, so now I kind of know that's a big indicator that you're type 1. So the next day, the diabetic specialist doctor came in and he said, I think you're type 2 because of your age and your weight. By the way, 29 is not old to get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, in case you're watching this for education. A lot of the people I've met since then have been diagnosed in their 30s, their 40s. As we know, Theresa May was diagnosed type 1 diabetic in her 50s. So it can happen at any age. Anyway, so this doctor said, look, we're going to put you on insulin just in case you're a type 1, but we're going to give you all the tests and give you a call in a couple of weeks. So I was still a bit shell shocked, obviously, at this stage, and they said, inject this panda. A panda. A cute little panda. Honestly, you would think, obviously it was all set up for children being diagnosed, but that would be terrifying for a child to have to inject a poor little panda. Anyway, so my diabetic training, if that's what you can call it, consisted of the doctor saying, right, this is your insulin. It was mixed insulin at the time. Take this twice a day, inject this panda to see how to do it, and basically out you get, off you go. You're type 1 diabetic now, maybe type 2, off you go into the real world with this insulin. My mind was blown. They told me to eat 2 Weetabix for the morning. Basically, the diet they gave me was just feeding insulin. There was no nutritional coaching, no explanation about how the insulin worked, what I could expect, how to treat a hypo. Anyway, I went down to the chemist with my prescription. Oh, by the way, it took me about 4 hours to check out of the hospital because they couldn't get my prescription right and stuff like that. Anyway, I went down to the pharmacy and I said, can I have this stuff? And they said, oh, you're type 1 diabetic. And I said, well, I'm not sure, I might be type 2, I don't really know. And they said, okay. And then I was going to pay for my prescription. They said, well, diabetics don't pay for their prescription. The doctor hadn't told me that, so I had to get a load of receipts. And then obviously I claimed it back at a later date. So off I went home as a diabetic and taking my insulin twice a day. And the fear, I mean, now I don't have any trouble, but the fear of injecting yourself for the first time all on your own, it's quite frightening, even for someone like me who's not afraid of needles. So I'm there and it took me absolutely ages to inject myself, and my work were fantastic. I went back to work the next day actually, and they said to me I could do reduced hours if I wanted, and I said, look, it helps me just to get into my routine, see what's going on, see how to cope. But as you can imagine, I was hypoing left, right and centre because the insulin dose was just made up on a whim, and there I was injecting myself gung-ho, off we go. And luckily for me, there's a couple of type 1s near where I sit at work, and they've been absolutely fantastic. And one of them took me aside and talked me through hypo treatments. Keep my hypo treatment next to my bed at night. That was the top tip I learnt, and that's the top tip I give anyone newly diagnosed. Because if you wake up in the middle of the night with a hypo, you don't want to be getting out of bed and crawling into the kitchen. So I did that, and I did have a couple of overnight hypos. Not too bad, touch wood. So that was me out in the big wide world as diabetic, and it went on like that for over 2 weeks. I didn't hear anything from anybody, and I kept phoning the clinic, saying, you know, I need to know, because at this stage I didn't know how to tell my friends and family. So obviously people at work knew, because I'd been off sick for 3 days while I was in hospital, but I hadn't told my friends and family because I didn't know what to tell them. I didn't know, am I type 2 on insulin, or am I type 1? But how can I be type 1? The doctor said I'm too old, and it was a very strange 2 or 3 weeks. Eventually they called me back in, and they said that they had tested my antibodies, and I was 100% definitely type 1 diabetic. They explained how the antibodies had killed off my pancreas. It was a genetic thing, not lifestyle driven. It's nothing I'd done to myself. And did I want to go on to the basal bolus insulin regime, which we'll go into another time for anyone who's new. So that was that, and luckily a few of the type 1s that I know out in the real world and told me about basal bolus. They told me definitely switch on that as soon as you can, because the mixed insulin twice a day is quite limiting. Well, for me, I found it limiting. So anyway, so that was me out in the big wide world as a type 1 diabetic. Not a clue what to expect. Was my life going to change? Would I still be able to go out and eat and drink with my friends and family? Obviously, I know now, yes. If anything, my life is all the more richer. I'm healthier. Things are just better, I think, than, I mean, certainly before I was diagnosed, because I felt so rough all the time. But now I know how to manage my health. I've met so many fantastic people. I've really learnt to appreciate what we have. I mean, the fact I've got access to things like the Dexcom, I can walk down to Boots and pick up test strips, insulin. There's countries in the world where type 1 is still a death sentence because insulin's not available, or it costs more than living wage, and it's just awful. So people say to me, oh, you're so unlucky to get type 1, and actually it's made me realise how lucky I am and how lucky we are sometimes to have access to these things. So anyway, my next hurdle then was telling my family, because I didn't want them to worry. I was getting control of it. I felt, actually just took it in my stride, and I thought, you know what? I have to inject 4 times a day. There's not a lot I can do about it, so I'm just going to crack on. I'm going to join a few online forums, speak to the people I know, and just crack on with it. And by the way, that's another top tip. I'll do a top tips video at some stage, but reaching out to other people, amazing. So it came to the point, and I told the guy at work, I said, look, I'm going to tell my mum and dad this weekend. I'm really worried. What should I do? How should I say it? And he said, right, make sure your blood sugar's on point before you go into the conversation. He said, the last thing you want to do is be telling them that you're fine and it's all under control, and then have a hypo. And that was, I mean, this was before I was on a CGM. CGM changed my life, so another top tip. So I was doing the finger pricking, didn't really understand exactly how the carbs were affecting my blood sugar, but pretty much straight away I was kind of getting it. I was still in the honeymoon period as well at that point, which basically is when you are first diagnosed, you're still producing a little bit of insulin, so it kind of helps you along the way a little bit, although it's quite hard to manage. Anyway, I told my mum and dad. They were a little bit shocked, surprised, just like I was, but they were cool and supportive. They went away and looked things up, and now with all the tech and the gadgets and everything, it's just not, it's not something I really stress about. It's not something I would ever moan about, and I've made so many new friends. I've shared so many experiences that I've never ever would have got to do before. And I can honestly say that I think it's enriched my life, and you know, I'm not ashamed of it. I've got a medical alert tattoo on there for safety reasons. I wear my Dexcom there, mainly because I can't knock it off on a door frame and I don't like it on my belly. But yeah, that's my diagnosis story. I don't know if you guys have got any similarities, troubles getting diagnosed, especially in later life. For sure, a lot of people have experienced similar things, and a lot of the awareness and a lot of the help and advice given out at first is all based around children. Juvenile diabetes, it's known as. So a lot of the support is geared up for parents with children or teenagers, not a lot for adults diagnosed. So yeah, that's something that me and a few friends who would, well, some of us were diagnosed later in life, some younger. We've sort of set up some diabetic meetups in London, which we'll go through in another video. But yeah, thank you for listening to my story. Please give me any comments below if you want to share your story, or you've had any similarities, or any bells were ringing thinking, yeah, that happened to me too. And I will look forward to seeing you in my next video. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I'm just saying that because I see the other YouTubers saying it, but give me a thumbs up anyway.